You know those moments that sneak up on you? The ones that feel normal on the surface, but something inside you just knows they're not? That is exactly what happened the first time Emily heard her name in Daniel's voice. It was simple, soft, almost too ordinary to notice, but it changed something she couldn't explain. Emily had always been the calm one in her friend group, the steady one, the one who never let her heart rush ahead of her mind. But that morning felt different. She didn't know why at first. She only knew that her name had never sounded that warm on anyone's tongue. Emily was walking into the small community library where she volunteered 3 times a week. It was early, just past 9 in the morning. The air was cool. Her mind was quiet. Everything felt slow and peaceful. Then she heard it, a gentle voice behind her. Emily? Just her name, nothing more, but it made her stop. She turned around and found Daniel standing a few steps away. He looked slightly out of breath, like he had hurried across the parking lot just to catch her before she went inside. Daniel wasn't new in her life, not at all. They had known each other for years. They grew up in the same town, went to the same school, shared the same circles. He had always been kind, steady, and quietly thoughtful. But he had never said her name like that before. Soft, warm, almost careful. Emily felt her heartbeat shift in a way she wasn't ready for. "Good morning," she said, trying to sound normal. Daniel smiled. Not a big smile, just a small, real one that lifted only one corner of his mouth, the kind of smile that said he had something on his mind. "I brought this for you," he said, holding out a book wrapped in simple brown paper. He looked almost shy as he offered it. That alone surprised her. Daniel wasn't shy, at least not usually. Emily blinked. "For me?" He nodded. "I found it yesterday and thought of you. I remember you mentioning you were looking for a story that felt peaceful, something gentle." Her heart tugged a little. She did say that, but she said it weeks ago. She never expected him to remember. Emily slowly took the wrapped book. Her fingers brushed his for a moment, just a second, but something warm passed between them, like a spark that wasn't loud or bright, just quiet enough to be real. "Thank you," she said. Her voice felt softer than she meant it to. Daniel didn't say anything right away. He just looked at her in a way that made her feel seen, not stared at, not judged, seen. It made her breath catch for a moment. She cleared her throat and looked down at the book, trying to calm the sudden warmth rising in her chest. "What made you think of me?" she asked lightly. His answer was simple, but it was the way he said it that made the air shift around them. "Because your name came to mind before I even realized it," he said. "And when that happens, it usually means something." The beginning of a feeling she wasn't ready to admit out loud. But it was there. Quiet, steady, growing. As Daniel walked away, Emily stood there at the library door with the wrapped book in her hands, wondering why her heart suddenly felt different, and why his voice was still echoing inside her. You know how some gifts feel heavier than they look? Not because of their weight, but because of what they might mean? That was exactly how Emily felt as she stood alone in the quiet library, the wrapped book still held against her chest. Daniel's voice lingered in her thoughts like a warm echo she couldn't shake. She finally walked to the small wooden desk near the back, the same spot where she always unpacked new arrivals. But today, she didn't feel focused. Her mind kept circling back to the way he said her name. Soft, steady, almost like it mattered to him in some new way. When she finally unwrapped the book, she paused. It wasn't just any book. It was an older story she had mentioned only once, years ago. A gentle tale about finding quiet hope in unexpected places. It wasn't popular, it wasn't special to most people, but it had been special to her. She opened the cover, expecting to see the usual printed page. Instead, she froze. A small note was tucked inside. Nothing dramatic, just one folded piece of paper. Her heart gave a soft, nervous flutter. She lifted it with careful fingers. The handwriting was unmistakably Daniel's, neat, steady, almost too sincere for its own good. She read the few words he had written. I thought you might need something calm this week. If this story brings you even a little peace, then I'll be glad I found it. Daniel. That was it. Simple. But the simplicity made it feel even more personal. Emily swallowed. Her chest tightened in a way she didn't expect. Why would he say she needed peace? Did she seem stressed? Had he noticed something she didn't know she was showing? She didn't have long to wonder. A soft knock sounded on the desk. Mrs. Turner, the elderly librarian who supervised the volunteers, smiled gently. New book? She asked. Emily quickly folded the note and slipped it into the cover. Just something a friend gave me. Mrs. Turner gave her a knowing look. One day, she said, you're going to admit what the rest of us already see. Emily blinked. What do you mean? Oh, sweetheart, Mrs. Turner said with a small laugh. I'm too old to pretend I don't notice when someone looks at you with that kind of softness. Emily felt heat rise in her cheeks. It's not like that. The old woman raised an eyebrow. Is that what you believe, or what you want to believe? Emily didn't answer. She couldn't, because she didn't know. Mrs. Turner gently patted her hand and walked away to help a group of students who had just come in, leaving Emily alone again with her thoughts. The rest of the morning passed slowly. Emily sorted books, helped visitors find what they needed, and typed a few overdue reminders. But her mind drifted again and again to Daniel. What had changed? Why did his voice feel different today? Why did he sound careful? She didn't have answers, but she knew something was shifting. When her volunteer hours ended just after 1 in the afternoon, Emily stepped outside into the cool air. The sky was calm, gently cloudy. And then she saw him. Daniel was standing near his car across the parking lot. He wasn't leaning on it. He wasn't checking his phone. He was just standing there, waiting for her. Her breath caught. He noticed her immediately and lifted a hand in a small wave. Not eager, not rushed, just warm. Emily walked toward him slowly, unsure why her legs suddenly felt light and heavy at the same time. He met her halfway. I wasn't sure when you'd be done, he said, but I wanted to ask something before you left. His tone was gentle, almost hesitant. Daniel was rarely hesitant. Emily hugged her arms lightly around herself. What did you want to ask? He looked down at his hands for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. Then he looked up, meeting her eyes. Did the book help, even a little? The way he asked it made her heart tug again. It wasn't a casual question. He wasn't making small talk. He genuinely wanted to know. Emily nodded. It did, more than I expected. Daniel let out a breath like he'd been holding it. His shoulders relaxed slightly. I'm glad, he said, quietly. There was a pause. Not an awkward one, just soft, thoughtful. Then Daniel lifted his hand and gently pointed to the trees behind her. Would you walk with me for a moment? He asked. Emily hesitated, only for a second. Something about the way he looked at her felt new, almost like he had been carrying a feeling for a long time, and today was the day it finally showed through the quiet cracks. She nodded. They began walking along the small path behind the library, where the trees created a peaceful shade. The world felt quieter there, gentler. After a minute, Daniel slowed. He didn't stop, just walked more carefully, as if he was trying to choose the right moment to speak. Emily, he said. Her name again, that same warmth, that same softness that made her heart flutter. She looked up at him. He took a breath. And then he said something that made her steps falter ever so slightly. There's something I should tell you. His tone wasn't heavy, just sincere, honest. Emily felt a quiet rush of emotion rise inside her. "What is it?" she asked. Daniel looked at her with steady eyes, full of something she couldn't yet name. "I didn't give you that book just to be kind," he said softly. "There's more to it." Emily stopped walking, her breath caught again. More? What more? He stepped a little closer. But before he could explain, a sudden sound from nearby, someone calling out for help with dropped papers, broke the moment. Daniel turned his head briefly, distracted. Emily stood very still. Her heart felt suspended between fear and hope, and she wasn't sure which one would win. Some moments don't break. They just pause. That was exactly what happened when Daniel opened his mouth to tell Emily the truth, and someone nearby called for help with dropped papers. The sound wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was enough to interrupt the fragile moment Daniel had been building up to. Emily watched him turn his head, instinctively ready to help. He had always been that way, kind before anything else. But in that brief pause, her heart felt suspended, almost like it was waiting on a word that hadn't arrived yet. Daniel helped the older man gather the scattered papers. It took only a moment, but Emily used those seconds to breathe, to steady herself, to ask silently, what was he going to tell me? And why did she already feel the answer in her chest? When Daniel returned to her, he looked apologetic. "Sorry," he said softly. Emily shook her head. "It's all right." But it wasn't really all right. The moment had cracked open something inside her, and now she needed to know. "Daniel," she said gently, "you were saying something." He hesitated, a long, quiet kind of hesitation, the kind that carried weight. "Yes," he said finally, "I just want to say it carefully." His honesty made her breath catch again. They walked a few more steps down the shaded path, the soft rustle of leaves filling the silence. Then Daniel stopped. Really stopped, like he didn't want to walk away from this moment again. He turned toward her fully. "Emily," he said, and even though she'd heard her name from him 100 times, this time felt different again. Gentler, more intentional. She lifted her eyes to his. He took a slow breath, and then he said something she never expected. "You matter to me more than I've ever said out loud." Emily's breath caught. Her heart stumbled in her chest. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Daniel continued before she could speak. "I'm not trying to push you," he said quickly. "I'm not asking for anything from you. I need you to know that when I think of something calm or kind or hopeful, your name is the one that comes to mind." He looked down for a second, almost embarrassed. "That's why the book made me think of you," he added softly. "Not because of the story, because of the feeling it gave me." Emily felt warmth spread across her chest, slow and steady, like sunlight finally reaching a quiet corner of her heart. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know how to match the softness he had just offered her. So she said the simplest truth. "Daniel, I didn't know you felt that way." He nodded slightly. "That's because I wasn't sure if I should say it." "Why not?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel met her eyes with a look that held honesty, affection, and the tiniest bit of fear. "Because I didn't want to ruin what we already have," he said quietly. "And because I didn't want my feelings to become something heavy on your shoulders." Emily felt her heart tighten again, this time in a gentle, aching way. "It doesn't feel heavy," she whispered. He exhaled like he had been holding that sentence deep inside. "Good," he said softly. "I hoped it wouldn't." There was a pause, a soft one, the kind that made the world feel slow and safe. Emily looked down at the book in her hands. Something calm, something gentle, something hopeful, just like he described, and just like the feeling building between them. She lifted her eyes again. "Daniel," she began carefully, "I don't know exactly what this is yet, but I feel something too, something I didn't expect." He didn't move. He didn't rush. He just listened. "I don't know the right words," she continued, "but when you said my name earlier today, something about it felt different. It felt," she searched for the right word, "safe." A small breath escaped him. Not a laugh, not a sigh. Something in between. Something relieved. "I'm glad," he whispered. They stood there under the trees, surrounded by soft light and quiet air. Nothing dramatic happened, no sudden confession, no overwhelming gesture. Just two hearts finally stepping a little closer to the truth. Then, just as Emily was about to speak again, a drop of rain touched her hand. She looked up. A second drop fell. Then a third. Daniel glanced at the sky. It wasn't supposed to rain today. The clouds above them darkened gently, but not in a stormy way, just enough to shift the air. Emily hugged the book against her chest again. "We should probably head back," she said. Daniel nodded. "Let me walk you." As they turned back toward the library, the rain began to fall a little faster. Not pouring, just a light, steady drizzle. They walked close, their shoulders almost brushing. Neither of them spoke. But the silence didn't feel empty. It felt full, like something unspoken was quietly settling between them. When they reached the entrance, Daniel stopped again. "Emily," he said softly. She turned toward him, raindrops glistening on her hair. He looked at her with a depth she wasn't used to seeing from him, like he was trying to memorize the moment. "There's still more I want to tell you," he said, "but I want to say it when we're both warm and not standing in the rain." Emily smiled gently. Something inside her softened even more. "Then tell me soon," she whispered. "I want to hear it." Daniel's eyes warmed in a way that made her heart flutter all over again. "I will," he promised quietly, "very soon." Some moments stay with you longer than they should. Emily carried the memory of Daniel's words with her for the rest of the day. Every soft sentence, every careful pause, every warm look. She replayed it over and over, especially the way he said her name, like it meant something, like it held a place inside him. By the time evening arrived, the rain had stopped. The sky turned pale orange as the sun set, and Emily sat by her bedroom window, holding the book Daniel had given her. Her fingertips traced the edge of the cover. She wasn't reading. She wasn't even trying. She was thinking, wondering, hoping. For the first time in a long while, her heart didn't feel quiet. It felt awake. Just as she was about to set the book aside, her phone vibrated lightly on the desk. A message. Emily hesitated before picking it up. It was from Daniel. "Are you home?" Her pulse picked up, softly, not in fear, but in something warm and uncertain. She typed back, "Yes, why?" His reply came seconds later. "Can I stop by for a moment? There's something I want to say, and I don't want to wait too long." Emily took a slow breath. He wasn't dramatic. He wasn't impulsive. If he wanted to talk today, on the same day he had already shared so much, then it mattered to him. "Okay," she replied gently. "I'll be here." He didn't send anything else. He didn't need to. Emily stood from her chair and walked to the mirror. She smoothed her hair without thinking. Then she stopped, realizing what she was doing. Why am I nervous? Why does my heart feel like this? She knew the answer, or at least most of it. Because the way he spoke to her today wasn't small. His honesty had opened something inside her, something she didn't want to ignore anymore. A soft knock came at the front door. Emily's breath caught. She walked downstairs, each step slow and careful, like she didn't want to rush the moment. When she opened the door, Daniel stood there under the warm porch light, slightly damp from the earlier rain, but calm, steady, and sincere, just like always. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi," she whispered. He didn't step inside right away. He just looked at her, his expression gentle but full of something deeper. "Is now still a good time?" "Yes," she said. "Come in." She led him to the small living room. Everything felt quiet, almost too quiet, but safe. Daniel stood near the window, his hands lightly clasped, as if gathering the confidence he needed. "Emily," he began, "I didn't want the day to end without telling you the rest." She nodded, taking a seat on the edge of the couch. Her heart felt like it was listening even more than she was. He took a slow breath. "When I said you matter to me, I meant it in a way I've been trying to hide for a long time." Emily's chest tightened gently. Daniel continued. "I kept it quiet because I didn't want to change anything between us, if you didn't feel the same. I didn't want you to feel pressured or uncomfortable." His voice stayed calm, but his eyes carried honesty so pure she couldn't look away. "But today, when you said hearing your name felt safe, something in me shifted. It felt like maybe I wasn't imagining everything." Emily swallowed, her heart softening even more. "You weren't," she whispered. A quiet relief crossed his face, like a weight had finally lifted. He stepped a little closer. "I've liked you for a long time," he admitted softly. "Not suddenly, not all at once, just slowly, gently, the way real feelings grow when you're not looking." Emily's breath trembled. "And I didn't say anything," he continued, "because your happiness has always come first, even if that meant staying quiet." She stood slowly, drawn toward him by something she didn't want to deny anymore. He looked at her with a gentleness that made everything inside her feel warm. "What changed today?" she asked quietly. "You did," he said. "When you looked at me with that small, careful hope, I felt something I couldn't hide anymore." Emily took one more slow step toward him. Her voice was almost a whisper. "Daniel, I'm glad you told me." His eyes softened, full of emotion. "But," she added gently, "I'm still figuring out my feelings. I don't want to rush something that deserves patience." Daniel nodded immediately. "I'm not asking you to rush," he said softly. "I just want to be honest with you, and I want you to know that whatever you feel, whatever pace you need, I'll follow it." That sentence touched her more deeply than anything else he had said. Patience, gentleness, care. She took a quiet breath. "Can you stay for a little while?" she asked. Daniel smiled, small, warm, hopeful. "Of course." They sat on the couch, leaving a respectful space between them, but the air felt full of something new, something warm, something steady. They talked softly about simple things, her day, his afternoon, the tiny library moments that usually didn't matter, but somehow felt meaningful today. Every glance they shared carried quiet emotion. Every smile felt softer. Then, as the house grew quiet and the night deepened, Emily felt a gentle shift inside her. A question, a hope, a fear. She turned to him slightly. "Daniel, earlier you said you still had more to tell me." He met her gaze carefully. "I do." She watched him quietly, waiting. Daniel took a slow breath. "This part," he said softly, "is the hardest to say." Emily's heart fluttered.
He looked at her with a mixture of honesty and vulnerability. It's something I've kept to myself for a long time, and I'm afraid it might change everything. Emily's breath caught. "What is it?" she whispered. Daniel hesitated, just long enough to make her heart tremble. And then he finally spoke. "There's a reason your name sounds different when I say it, and I need you to know why." Emily's pulse quickened, her heart tightening in anticipation. What reason? Why now? What truth was he protecting all this time? She couldn't move. She could only wait. The moment held its breath.
Some truths don't arrive loudly. They arrive softly, so softly that your heart feels them before your mind understands them. That was exactly how it felt when Daniel looked at Emily with quiet honesty and said he had a reason. A reason her name sounded different in his voice. Emily's breath trembled. The room felt still, like everything was waiting with her. "Daniel," she whispered, "you can tell me." He nodded slowly, gathering his thoughts. "I guess I should start at the beginning," he said gently. He rested his hands on his knees and inhaled a steady breath. "The first time I said your name, really said it, I realized something." He paused. "It felt like home." Emily felt her heart soften instantly. She didn't speak. She didn't even breathe too loudly. He continued, voice calm but full of emotion. "I've said so many names in my life. Friends, coworkers, family. But yours?" He looked up at her with a depth that made her chest ache. "Yours always sounded different. Softer. Important. Like I needed to say it carefully, so I wouldn't break the feeling it gave me." Emily swallowed hard. Her throat felt tight. Daniel didn't rush. He let the moment breathe. "I didn't understand it at first," he admitted quietly. "I just knew that every time I said Emily, something inside me felt steadier, kinder, light." He looked down at his hands again, almost shy. "And the truth is, I kept that feeling to myself because it scared me. Not in a bad way, just in a way that made me want to protect it." Emily felt warmth bloom inside her, a soft, gentle warmth that made her eyes sting with emotion. She leaned forward slightly. "Why did it scare you?" she asked softly. Daniel met her gaze again, and this time there was no hesitation in his eyes. "Because I wasn't sure if you felt anything close to what I felt," he said, "and I didn't want to risk losing something that mattered to me so much." The honesty in his voice was so pure it made her chest tighten. He continued, "But today, when you looked at me with that careful hope, I realized something I hadn't let myself believe." "What's that?" Emily whispered. "That maybe," he said, "your heart wasn't far from mine." Emily felt a soft rush of emotion spread through her. Her fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the couch. She hadn't expected those words. And yet, deep down, part of her had known. She took a quiet breath. "Daniel," she said, "I didn't know how much my name meant to you. I didn't know you felt all of this when you said it." He nodded slowly. "I know. I hid it well. Too well, maybe." Emily gave a fragile smile. "But I felt something today too," she said gently. "And I'm still figuring it out. But I want to understand it. With you. Not alone." Daniel's expression softened so deeply it nearly broke her heart, in the best way.